Yes, that's right. I'm waiting for. Tell me when you're ready to go. Yeah. We're good to go. Hey, welcome everybody to this afternoon's workshop regarding the topic being simplifying local government. Please rest assured, my experience so far to date with it, since the ministers announced it, there's nothing simple about it. We're dealing with the future generations of the Clutha District Council. So what Steve has presented here, and thank you very much, Steve, for the papers in today's agenda. It's been a pretty arduous quite a few weeks since the minister's announcement, and working alongside of our colleagues in the Otago Mayoral Forum. What you see in front of you is what I put to Steve to workshop, and with Steve's help, this is what he's presented. Those maps and boundaries is just my own thoughts, and I presented it to the Otago Regional Council as well. They were very open and recipient to them. But I thought we can't keep kicking the can down the road. We've got to start getting on with this. Even though it's not legislated at the moment, there's no binding legislation saying we need to be doing it, but I think it's pretty clear from the voices of our communities that they all agree something needs to change. So these options here, we've got a guest from Fed Farmers. I've asked Anna, she's the president of the Otago Federated Farmers, to attend today too, to offer some viewpoints, just to help with our discussions and workshopping at any time. So Anna will bring her in at some point. And we may have Stu from Morrison Load. Steve and I agreed to get some figures together on the proposed maps as well. But I think the more information we have as a council, more informed decisions we can make for our people. But at the end of the day, I dare say our people guide us too in our decision-making process. So we'll get on with the one and only item, really. Simplifying local government option discussion. So would you like to move that we actually receive the report? Rog and Dane. Right. Steve, did you want to talk to us?
Yes, Your Worship. So, I mean, we did this reasonably quickly, and we actually had to set up the workshop, obviously, reasonably quickly, and apologies for the mix-up around the timelines with the meeting request at 1 o'clock and the agenda with 1:30. So that's just indicative of everything happening at once. For it, appreciate the fact that you've been able to put this and come out additionally for this matter. And that the issue we've got is 9th of August is the deadline. We either do something on the 9th of August or we do nothing, and then it'll, things default to the backstop process and things like that. So we just have to make a conscious decision: are we going to do something or are we not going to do something? And all the work that's been going on behind the scenes, some of the updates that you've been getting, and that sort of comes down to, well, you need time to workshop your way through it, and it's really it's really the first opportunity you've had with information that's been generated over time to bring it all together for you, so it's in front of you, so that you can ask the questions, you can be informed, you can understand things, and then give us a direction, so that I then, staff will then write up a decision report, and we'll tack an extraordinary meeting. We have tacked an extraordinary meeting next week into the workshop that's next week, so we can just get the resolution about whatever it is that you want to do. So that's how we've had to add all these things in over the top of other things that we're doing, and that's so I appreciate your interest and your participation in this process. So the paper hopefully brings everybody up to date with all the information about what's gone on before this, how has this arisen, what is the framework for everything, the decision. It's tried to give up-to-date information as of the time of the report, and we can further update today as well. With everything else going behind the scenes, discussions amongst councils, amongst mayors, and things like that. So you should be have the latest information, supplemented by a little bit more that I can give now. You should have the latest information, and therefore again be better informed about where things are going. The makeup of the report, as I said, it's pulled all the engagements together. It's including Otago information and engagement. In that sense, there has been engagement at that level. You can see the results of that, and that's just been fed in there. Just as importantly, the Otago-wide community engagement process and the results are there. Just as importantly, our own Clutha district engagement process is in there, and we've got some information. So, you know, we've gone out to the community. I know that there is some, you know, commentary out there about, you know, not getting opportunities to participate and all this sort of thing, but you know, there's not a lot of time for bits and pieces, but we have, you made a decision, which, you know, was really good, to go out there and ask the people and they can have an opportunity to submit and put it in. And we know we didn't get a lot of submissions back, but there was a period and there was an availability. There was time available for that, and we've presented that information in there. As His Worship mentioned, that when it all started and the Otago Mayoral Forum got together, the first thing that they agreed upon was that they would get some analysis, financial and other analysis, about a range of options. And so the Morrison Low analysis that you see in here is based on the first request or direction from the Mayoral Forum about various options. And that takes some time. So some of that has been potentially superseded. The decision by Waitaki, for example, their resolution that they are looking to go north rather than part of Otago was obviously a major change to some of the information that was in here that basically included Waitaki and a lot of the modelling, for example. So, you know, the financial modelling and the analysis there is actually really useful because it still gives you a good grounding and understanding of principles and other things, you know, what matters, how they have assessed things. But again, that's also been superseded by some of the decisions that have been taken. I'm just trying to think to summarise the financial, the analysis from Morrison Low. There's a whole lot of caveats associated with disclaimers, caveats attached to their analysis. We would all agree, Morrison Low would be the first to say that the level of detail in this analysis does not compare to the level of detail we had through the, you know, the Otago South and Three Waters stuff and all that, because it just couldn't do it. They were limited in what they could do, right? So what you need to be looking at there is there's only a limited way that you can look at it too. We were looking to try and generate information that would tell us, you know, of those options, is there a clear outlier, either way up there or way out there, you know, in that. And so when you pull it all together, the information's, at least from the financial perspective, is saying, well, financially, there's no significant outliers saying you should be doing this or you can't be doing that. All the ranges that they're talking about are relatively comparable. Some are better than others, but not to an extent that says this is much, much better than something else. We should really be looking at that. And I think, you know, the same conclusion was reached by the Mayoral Forum because they were all looking at it the same way and said, well, we don't see anything leaping out here that says we should go a particular direction. So I think, you know, that may do an injustice to the information, but that's just my quick summary to try and explain to you, you know, that part, that's what we're looking for. What else is there? The other things were that when Waitaki made their decision and then materially and substantively affected what options might be on the table, it definitely affected the, the 3 council rural option that had been there. Then the thought process was, well, what other alternatives might there be that we should be looking at? And it is all about generating alternatives so that we can all be informed where we want to go. And that's where, His Worship came up with suggestions around, the mountains to the sea approach and things like that. And what did that actually mean with Waitaki not being around? Really just meant the Queenstown Lakes District Council area, Central and Clutha, as the rump of 3 existing boundaries. What did that mean? We didn't have information on that, so we've asked for information for it. That was done at short notice too, luckily we have just received, just before lunch, which I've only picked up now, but we have just received that analysis, and so we're emailing it to you now. We'll get hard copies. I'll get Stuart Cross in, and he said he's available from 2:30, worship. That should be fine for the discussion, because I haven't read it. You haven't read it, and he just needs to introduce that side of things in terms of what it's saying, so we can just understand that as well. So at least we've done that side of it. The additional options that were in there was about broadening those boundaries, those rough boundaries of the three councils. So firstly, it was about looking at the Torrey Plains, the rural element of the Torrey Plains, bringing the rural aspects back in, and also that Waihemo ward of Waitaki, where there was potentially some interest expressed by that council in that particular ward, maybe, and looking to the south. And then lastly, there was the the addition around, where does Gore fit? And we were just looking at it from the perspective that we were aware that one of the options that Gore District was looking at was looking to Otago. So we just built that into that as well. There is no analysis or assessment of those additions. They just could not be done because they were more complicated. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's necessary in that sense. And the reason why I don't think it's necessary is, when you look at all the information and go through it and all that sort of thing, one of the things that you need to decide is, do you believe that there's a valid Head Start proposal that we could work with other councils on for the 9th of August, right? And you'll reach your own conclusion about that. I know that the feeling of the other mayors was that a number of the other councils didn't feel that they were, or the Otago councils didn't feel they were in that position to go down a Head Start proposal. Now, having said that, nobody's actually resolved that yet. The only council that I believe made resolutions is Waitaki for the going north. None of the rest of the Otago councils have had their decision meetings to actually to do that. This is only what we've been hearing from the discussion. And so if we're in that position where that may not be on the table, what does that mean? And I believe that there's definitely an interest in not just letting things happen to us by just fitting into the backstop proposal, where the government sort of makes the rules and decides on that, and that there is interest in whether we can, as a collective group, indicate that we're all working well together. We're interested in looking at our options and intending to do something within that sort of space. We're not ready yet for a Head Start, but we want to work together and not be within that backstop process. So anyway, that's potentially an option to be considered. But at the end of the day, it's your workshop, and you've got to have that opportunity to discuss. So yes, the only update is the info from. Thanks, Mel.
There's only a couple of things.
Oh, I don't think so.
Because you've all got it on you should all have it on your computers as well.
Yeah.
Becky, I've just emailed you, Stuart.
But I haven't looked at it. We can talk about it when at the right time. I suspect it's not going to tell us too much, but that's just a guess without looking at it.
Are the same as in the main.
I could be wrong. But otherwise, I think that's an update, Your Worship, on things. Happy to take any questions. I'd be interested, just like everybody else, in where feed farmers are coming from as well, and that side of things, because it's true, isn't it, that when we're proposing the options, protecting and promoting, enhancing the rural side of things, which we're a rural provincial council, was pretty important to our people. That's it from me, Your Worship, I think.
So that's sort of with what I've been watching since this was put on us from the ministers and the Right Honourable Upson, it was a really good watch. His corridor on it, and what I took away from that was the catchments. He says, don't ignore the catchments. For goodness sake, just don't ignore the catchments. So a combination of his conversation and the findings, and that's why I was so keen that when I was away at that point to get our own survey out to hear from our own local voices. And it's really resonated that our rural voices are really fearing that they'll get smothered by the urban components. So that was my motivator, and no one else was doing much, and was to bring those maps together with the help of Steve, just to get a bit of a conversation going at this stage. The other mayors have been really good to work with in our mayoral forums. We have weekly catch-ups. Everyone's on board. When I presented these options to them last week, they were very open-minded, wide-eyed approach. And I'd go as far as saying between Central Otago and Inchtown Lakes, there is a flavour for a single rural unitary authority. So yeah, simplifying local government is not quite that simple. The other thing we've also got to be very mindful of, that's in our workshop agenda here, is 1.1, the reform context. A lot of people are losing sight of that, and everyone's fixated on the amalgamations. But the government have sent a clear message. 2028, the regional councils are gone. So it's taken the emphasis off this amalgamation component. So we've also got to be very mindful in our decision making. What's that going to look like? You know, with our other conversations we're having with who's going to be our buddies. So we've got to be mindful of that too. So, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, and I don't know if I missed it, but is Labor indicated their direction if they this is a change?
Vocally they haven't, but when we were in Wellington, when the minister spoke to us, and Steve and I were there, the rural provincial, when the Labor member was their turn to talk, they indicated that they will be following the same path if there's a change of government.
So, I mean, you'd expect tweaks and things like that, but I think the message we got was that they weren't going to do a wholesale. Well, so far we don't believe that they would do a wholesale turnaround. So the wholesale turnaround that this government did for the Labor government's thing, we're not expecting that type of approach from if a Labor government got it.
So yeah, clearly they know that there's a call for change too. So.
The other thing, and in regards to the process of being rushed, there was a third option I read in there that we could take. That was basically saying, look, we'll just stop and think about it and have a look. Or
that's regarding the if we can't come to agreements to a Head Start proposal at the moment. The only other option is a backstop.
Yeah,
but then we could, if all our councils agree, we could put a letter forward to the DIA and ask them that we're not ready for a Head Start, but don't want to fall into the backstop. We've been working collaboratively. We just need a bit more runway, and put a letter to them saying we just need a bit more runway. We think that's another approach that we could go, and we did ask the DIA that when they were present at the last mayoral forum in Oamaru, because they don't even know what the backstop is. I think it's going to be a combination of the Head Start, what comes out of that from the other councils, but they've got no indicator of what the backstop would look like. So I just asked them straight out. I said, what happens 9 August comes and we're not ready for a Head Start? What's the backstop? I said, are you going to smack us on the arse or what's going to happen? And they couldn't answer it. So that's when we've decided that maybe we put a letter to them and say.
So that is coming from us rather than them?
Yeah, that's coming from us, yeah. Well, a combination of us, CODC and Queenstown Lakes. So. Michelle.
So, Doc, have they actually given you an indication that they will? I mean, we could sit here, debate this and the rest of it and think, yes, this is best for us to go forward. But if neither of the other groups want us on board or want to thing with us, how do we get on there? Because that puts us in that holding position, you see.
It does, yeah, but,
So if we say, look, you know, we would really like to, you know.
yeah.
and then
But
they-
today's not a decision day though.
I know, I
Remember, it's just a
understand that.
workshop, that's next
Yeah.
week, but
Yeah,
we're, Central Otago are having their workshop tomorrow, so we're the first cab off the rank.
right.
And then Queenstown, and then when the decision day comes, I don't know what the CODC and Queenstown Lakes are going to say. So,
Exactly. I mean,
so we won't know. None of us will know until after that.
And then from there, you put the thing forward.
Yeah, and then we'll have more conversations. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's a bit like waiting on the bank manager to see if your loan
Yeah.
application's been accepted or not. So,
Yeah.
Macca.
Just on those timeframes, with the Head Start, so we obviously going to be on a tight timeline, but say in another region, and I've got a few councils keen to go. If they say, right, all the councils agree, they vote on August the 9th, they're away, does that mean that they will have a new unitary council stood up, ready to be elected in 2028?
Yes.
Or does the process still?
No, if the government has a Head Start proposal and approves a Head Start proposal, you would expect that means that it would happen in 2028.
Yeah, so it'd be fully functional in 2028.
Yes, so part of the requirements is that it would be any proposed grouping needs to be able to be fully functional by 2028.
Yeah.
Oh, that function.
So possibly following on from that question, there's two things could happen too, and beyond our control. Southland might put in a proposal that we're part of their proposal without even consulting with us.
But they can't go across the boundary, it says in that Head Start.
Yes.
Unless the other two councils agree to put it in the proposal, isn't it? Like Southland and Invercargill.
No, I mean technically they couldn't do I don't think they can go cross boundary on those things. But that's the problem. Nobody knows.
There's uncertainty, but then also with the regional council functions, what will it look like if we can't agree? It falls back to the CTB's process. So, like,
Sounds like it'd be very hard work for the mayors. It doesn't happen in 2028.
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not thinking that far ahead.
Yes, but
But your guidance will help me, Simon.
Yeah.
Councillor Catherall, I know you've got a burning question.
No, I've done my homework pretty much. Yeah. So the way I've interpreted it is that you actually can cross the boundary. The requirement of the Head Start is that you do combine with one other neighbour. So it's only two amalgamated councils to hold hands to put their proposal together, and you can go across your boundary. It looks like 28, but I think it'll end up being, the director could end up being that it'll be as fast as that you could with, if you did amalgamate with other partners. I don't think it would be forced upon you that's the exact date. But one thing, from what I can understand, is there is one guarantee, is that the functions of regional council are coming onto unitary councils, and that's where they're going with it. So however that's going to get mucked up. So to me, I think we've got to look at this with in a positive light, taking on the obligation of the functions of, and then to me it sort of starts making sense. Is the river, the catchments. So yeah, and we don't know. Like no one knows. Like we're just really going to be throwing a dart blind. But I suppose it comes down to each one of us is the belief that this is a good idea. Will it work? And is it going to be beneficial to people we represent?
Yeah, well, if you go to
That's-
1.2.2, there goes your assessment criteria.
Yeah.
That's the assessment criteria.
Because that's where with Gore talking about coming across the boundary, it's like, well, the catchments will never work.
Well, they would if you go a wrong way across.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, there's a big difference here. I don't know.
Your worship, I actually like the idea of initially the three councils that you mentioned, and pretty much on your proposal. A wee bit of trimming maybe on Dunedin and maybe the Waitaki end up, it gives us the Royal Council, and I think that's a big plus for us. The other plus is two of those councils are growth councils, and I think that's a big plus as well. So, and clearly there's not very many people that are very keen on having Dunedin involved in too much. So, like Councillor Cathwood, it's up in the air. We don't exactly know, but I think that's probably what would best suit us in my opinion.
I'll just before we do that, Bruce, if you go to 1.4 and you see Steve's captured it at the bottom of the page.
Page
5, page 5. The Clutha District Council does not pursue a Head Start proposal and instead progresses a letter indicating a desire to progress outside of the backstop process. It would confirm that there would be no changes to the 2028 local government elections. And once again, he's just highlighting, except that there would be no elections for the Otago Regional Council. So, yeah, we'll be looking at 2031. So
At the latest, and 2028 at the earliest. Yeah.
Well, no, if you don't submit a Head Start proposal, you won't have anything for 2028.
28.
That's clear.
that's clear.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's clear is there'll be no regional council. So if we're not ready for amalgamation, we're going to be looking at a CTV of some form.
That's right. I think that's something we all need to be mindful of. We're better to have some say in what we want to do than no say. Because if it comes to backstop, they're just going to say, this is what you do,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. And we might like it. We don't know, because that was a question I've had. What's the backstop? And as the Mayor says, no one knows.
Yeah. Bruce.
Yeah, just on Roger said, no one was overly keen on going with the meeting, and
They think that.
I worry that maybe there might be people not that keen on going with Clutha when you look at the numbers and you look at our debt and you look at all this small, we're not a growth council, all these things. I worry that, hey, who wants the poor boy, you know? And a lot of the stuff is, if you don't dig into it to see why our debt the way it is, you might think, well, hey mate, who wants a Clutha, you know?
And same argument could be said, look, dig into the debt of the Queenstown Lakes District Council.
Well, yeah, that's right. But like on
But at the
just
moment,
looking at it,
Yeah.
I have concerns that maybe, and bear in mind, there's a lot of new councillors in these councils that might not go on face value. Boy, I just have that concern that.
yeah, but in the meantime, though, and not defending your question, going defensive about it, but we haven't had time to go into that detail, Bruce. We just have not had the time to get into the detail, and
yet the decision
yeah.
is getting made in the next.
Yeah, well, there's a decision coming by 9 August, and we just physically haven't had the time for the detail, but for now, our focus has got to be on, are we prepared to progress our conversations with particular councils? The detail will come later. It'll come later, but if you go to your page 7, most respondents, 57.4% supported a separate rural-focused amalgamation option. And that's been my guide so far with these proposals.
But Jock, one thing we've all got to, like, just adding to Bruce's concerns is the government's got to agree. If we can say, yeah, we want to do this, and then they've got to agree to it. So they're going to look at it in detail and they'll go, no, this is not happening because of this reason or that reason. So that could also happen. It might be romantic for us to say, oh yeah, this looks really good on the face of it, but the detail might not let it happen. We don't know.
But once again, if you go back to the assessment criteria that Steve's got outlined here, D, economies of scale, whether the proposal supports regional strategic planning, effective delivery of key regional functions, responsible asset management, infrastructure investment, and affordable service delivery. So, but we can't burrow into this detail, worry about what our neighbour's debt is, until we actually come to a heads of agreement to say, hey, we're prepared to put our names to a bit of paper, and so we're prepared to work together moving forward. So,
I suppose your worship, it's, just to update is, I can't, I mean, we're not bringing to you into this workshop a Head Start proposal because we haven't got one, and nobody's tapped us on the shoulder and said, we want to work with you in a Head Start proposal. So there isn't, as far as I'm aware, in Otago, a Head Start proposal other than Waitaki's resolution that talks about a Head Start proposal, but Waitaki's doing it on its own, and that'll be interesting in terms of where that fits. But that's their resolution. But we haven't got a Head Start proposal
in front of us. And as you can see by the Morrison Lowe report too, there's no golden goose out there at all. You'd be better off buying a lotto ticket for tonight and hope like bloody hell, but there's no golden goose out there. So
Council should, maybe it'll help things a bit.
yeah, that wouldn't go far, but so, you know, like just progressing through our agenda here. So you've got the correspondence from Ngāi they came and presented to us in Oamaru to give us the way they're looking at things. And hence my invitation to Otago Federated Farmers, because I believe they've got a viewpoint on all this as well, because we are a rural district. So
is that appropriate time to...
I think it could be an appropriate time to give us a viewpoint. We've had time to read the Ngāi one. Yeah, and you can see in there some of our workshopping with the Merrill Forum as well, how we've landed a lot of the decision making, and the rural component comes through.
Kia ora, and thanks for that invite to be here. Probably an answer to your question and your concerns about you being seen as a poor cousin down the road. That's not a conversation I've heard before. That's not a concern that I've had raised anywhere. Grew up in North Otago, farmer in the Manahara care now, so have connections around Otago, sixth generation Otago farmer. So have quite deep roots in North Otago, and obviously the Manahara care really quite connected to that. Central Otago is my husband's roots completely. Yeah, and that's, you're not being looked at like that at all. QLDC is the conversation around Queenstown, and nobody wants to touch that because it's got so many issues. Dunedin, the conversation around dysfunctional, don't want to touch it. Dunedin needs to be squashed in. Waitaki, you know what's going on there, but certainly not anyone looking here going, we don't want to work with you. So I'd put that aside. In terms of Fed's position, our position has strongly been about the rural voice, obviously, and you're acknowledging that. Our preference was probably, our proposal was 3 councils from Otago, so you would have a Dunedin metro with a closed boundary, like a smaller boundary than what you've proposed, and then a Queenstown metro with a just Queenstown, and then a Otago over the rural over the rest of it. We did kind of instigate conversation around Queenstown being bigger in terms of the Queenstown, Wanaka and Cromwell triangle. There's not really that much appeal for that, and the proposal on the table at the moment with DCC being out, but the rest of Otago being one, QRDC in, then that's certainly open to that. Also open the conversation about having one Otago, having a DCC ring fenced and a Queenstown ring fenced, so that because if that structure was set up right and you had boards over those, just like overseeing those functions that are specific to them, then that could work quite well in terms of a broader Otago. And Waihemo in or out makes no odds really. I think that's a conversation yet to be fought around the table in the Waitaki in terms of constituents actually being happy with that, I suppose. Because I can't see, I can't see where that's going to end actually. Trying to think what else in terms of Fed's position. Which is provincials. Yeah, and in terms of the detail, a question for Steve, I think, like if it's put to a head start, does it still have to go through a commission process to then be assessed for how it's going to function? That was my understanding. If you put it in a head start proposal, then it still goes through the current process of how you would change a council.
No, not it
Yeah.
excludes the current local government commission process that's occurring in Southland.
Yeah.
No, it's totally outside that. The legislation will be there to allow that to happen. And so basically if someone did submit head starts, and there'll be some that do, obviously, so that gets accepted. Everybody would, they all know that there's not a lot of detail, so they have a set time period to put the detail around what the transition will look like. So they've got a period of time to do that, all lined up with transitioning on the 2028 election. So there was always a view that there's only a limited number of councils or proposals that would ever be in that space. But that's the process. It's designed to go outside the local government commission.
That is where, it's all very well kind of trying to figure out your detail here. There's going to be plenty of time for that afterwards, I think. Getting the boundaries sorted and agreed to. Any questions?
Well, there could be opportunities for
Yeah.
councillors. Might have got a question for you if you're that, Anna.
There is a hand up.
How you going, young fella?
Yeah, good.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Stephen.
Can I just add perhaps an idea? It's probably all in your detail there, but I just did a quick Google there. When you go to the bank manager, you don't talk about your debt, you talk about your equity. So if you've got a pen and paper, you can write these numbers down. DCC 2.5.
What are these figures relating to?
These are relating to the relevant council's equity. Assets. Assets
Right.
net of debt.
Can we trust Google?
Well, it refers to the annual reports. So
Yeah.
if the CDC's is 1.8, you can take that. Maybe that's a way of looking at it. It's just a way of looking at it, so you've got a bit of an idea. So DCC 2.5 billion, CDC 1.8, ORC 0.9, Central Otago District Council 1.25, QLDC 2.97, Gore, anyone want to have a guess?
0.9.
0.364, Waitaki 2.6. So you're not poor cousin. Yeah, you can go on this little bit of stream.
Oh, you're answering Councillor Graham's question.
Assets and liabilities.
No, this is net of debt. So it's assets net of debt.
Yeah, but are they a liability?
Oh, the assets.
Well,
I suppose if someone's going to.
is it an asset you really want?
Yeah.
Would you be able to sell it for that? I don't think so.
Queenstown, why I've got them in the mix here is because what happens at the head of the Clutha River has an impact on us at this end of the Clutha River. So we've got to be able to know what's happening up there because it has an impact on us down here. And it could be local boards, Queenstown itself, I don't know. But in the meantime, it's a matter of having conversations with our neighbours and coming to a heads of agreement on our boundaries, and then we'll look at the detail. But for now, it's about getting a heads of agreement around the boundaries.
So would it be fair to say, like, we're quite a different council to Queenstown Lakes? We know that we want to definitely partner with our rural neighbours, because that protects us rurally. So we want to be as strong as we can rurally, for that would be the future around political table with a rural majority perspective would, I think, would give you great confidence. Well, it gets rid of the paranoia about Queenstown to me, because so long as you partner up enough, the rural sense, right? So representatives there. But I think it'd be fair to say that if you ended up with Queenstown in the mix, even if you actually ended up with Eden in the mix, I would actually say there'd be a long period of bit of ring fencing coming into the situation. Ring fencing of debt, ring fencing of the way things are operated. I think there'd be quite a long transition before you actually saw a uniform Otago council. It would be a long way away.
Oh, I don't think it'll be a long, long way at all. Once we get a heads of agreement, start drafting how it's going to look, it's going to have to happen.
I think they'll throw all the debts and all the services and everything into one pot.
You've got to 2031. So if they accept our letter, we'll need more time, we'll need more runway.
Yes, but I think Councillor Cathwood means that, which is going to be the case, is that any
You're not going to see
amalgamation
all.
councils are still going to be ring fenced debt,
Yeah.
ring fenced.
Oh, certainly.
Oh yeah, and the services and how we rate for services.
Targeted rates will
Yeah.
still be attached to
Yeah,
us.
because there's history. Like, it's going to
Yeah,
take
but
a
that's in
long
the
time
detail.
to- yeah.
That's in the
That's
detail,
long
we're not
down
at
the
that
track.
point. Yeah, we're not at that point. We're not at the detail point.
No, and that's one thing, like, this council's been through the Southern Waters thing. So it's be comparable to how that rolled, I would imagine. It didn't happen overnight, did it? Stuff was ring fenced.
Your Worship, one of the councillors, one of the biggest things around the, you include places like Dunedin or other central areas like Queenstown was always the question of the rural voice. You can always ring fence debt, you can do all these other things so that none of that changes. That's actually the minor bits and pieces. One issue that was always going to be the struggle was how do you set up when you are having those much bigger authorities to ensure that you get a rural voice. Now, in the CCO, we got a person on the board, didn't we, that represents rural, the fourth water, right? And each council still got something. But the issue is, when you take current representative rules, the representation is built on population, right? Numbers of councillors is based on population. So that's where you get the questions around Dunedin, swamping representation. And so you're always going to have that problem around elected members, and you're not going to be able to appoint non-elected members to anything. So forget that idea. And so you got that. And then the only other thing, if you're going down that pathway, is to try and find, well, okay, we might be able to have local boards, or we might be able to do something else. But the pure rural voice around, investment prioritisation, and all that side of things, that's the question that is a detailed question, Your Worship. We all say that, but it's always one of the biggest concerns that smaller councils have when they are moving into the bigger amalgamations, and that will always be the case with any combination.
Correct, yeah.
Simon?
Yeah, just on to say where we're tracking here is we're basically proposing 2 councils per day, just assuming we have the rural and then the need. In that Morrison and Lowe report, they suggested that we may still need another body to oversee some functions. But that was probably, I see, maybe not, depending on how although we've got the things like the spatial planning and stuff now, which encompasses all of Otago, so that complicates things. We will have to have something, but it's pretty important probably to have all the rural catchments inside the one council, because otherwise we end up, if we have a board that has to, or another mini regional council that oversees the catchments, then we're going to get into the same strife that we've had with the ORC. We've really been a stifler of probably economic growth and development in Otago for the last several years. And I take the case in point where Anna's from in the Manuhira-Kita. It's ultimately forced the Central Otago District Council to go to Parliament to try and resolve something that the ORC has totally failed on for several years. So bringing that back, point being, if we get a rural council, we've got to have as much functions inside that council, as much decision making, because that's been the problem with Dunedin. There's been a lot of Dunedin ORC councillors dictating what's been happening in these other parts of the world.
So if you have one unitary, then
Yeah.
the unitary will absorb the function of the regional council, right? So it'll be that organisation will have all that inside it, so you control that. The moment you split the unitary, so you have two, the question is, do you have two separate regional council functions? And in most cases, in looking at the sort of government sort of criteria bits and pieces, most times you'd look at it and go, well, that's probably not a good idea to duplicate regional council functions and things like that for a whole raft of reasons. So that tends to suggest that any multiple authorities that you end up generating, even if it was two under this arrangement, in that sense, or three, as you were suggesting, in that side of it, the solution that was most likely would be one entity outside those three councils or authorities, effectively a CCO like Southern Waters, which is controlled by the authorities that own it. So you would end up having that. So the only time you absorb the regional council functions is if you have it all within the one outfit. Most likely that would only be with a single unitary. And as I said, the moment you get into multiple unitaries, you are more likely to have an entity outside that does the functions, or whatever functions the government decides to not centralise and keep to themselves. Because some of those functions we still don't know which regional council functions are going to be held by the government potentially, and that. So that's how that would work, because and that's also how you get around issues where you might chop up half a catchment or something, and to the and that, because you can still manage it by the same entity is still managing it entirely, and you can still argue that it's still full catchment management.
Then you're probably not going to remove the politics.
Well, the difference is that they are board appointments, like the Southern Waters is, professional directors. There's still all the negatives that you might see that you're there, but hey, we've gone down a pathway with Southern Waters, right?
Yeah.
We've locked into something like that. We've agreed that this is where we're going to go. We've been part of the construction of it. There are still risks associated, but that's where we're heading. That type of structure, which is not political.
I'd like to see the minimum amount of functions possible go in there. There's a lot of unitary functions that could fit. A lot of regional council functions that could fit easily inside a unitary. If we are going to have something separate, it should have the minimum amount of functions.
And
Hang on. Yeah, Dane.
Sorry. So Steve, we have a map, we have an example here where we've put a small circle around Dunedin with a large, it's 120,000 population base. So why couldn't the Targo rural unitary, okay, it's got a Queenstown element in it, which is about 110,000 rest of that map made up. So population-wise, looking pretty good. We know that, I suppose, democratic political representation gets split up population-wise. Why couldn't the rural unitary provide the functions of what currently regional councils do? It's just a separate, that's what, offer that service to them.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have two people in the same functions in the same water catchments. Why couldn't the large landmass control it?
It's a valid potential structure where the larger entity contracts a service to the other.
Yeah.
I would just suggest that there would potentially be politics involved in that. Like you take your example.
Yeah.
I think theoretically, it's absolutely an option.
Yeah.
I just think for the same reasons that we might be wanting to have a rural voice, a city like Dunedin may not take kindly to have the service contracted by somebody else, but it's theoretically an option. The point with all those things is that those are all details, as his worship mentions. It's natural questions that people have, right? There's ways to solve all of those things.
Because isn't the goal to simplify local government? Isn't the goal about protecting, for us, is protecting a rural voice? The other stat that came out of the surveys was affordability.
Yeah.
So you're looking for the greatest to create affordability. So, I mean, if other political members had problems with trying to do those functions, they shouldn't be there.
But also,
Shouldn't we bring
before I come back to you, Roger, just saying to Dane here, I've already had this debate at the Merrill Forum.
Yeah.
Who has the biggest environmental footprint in Otago? And it is not Dunedin, right?
Correct.
They'll beat us with bus stops and parking meters. We'll win with plexus and bloody geckos. So when we're making our decisions, it's not just about simplifying government, what is good for our environment as well. So people aren't touching on that side of it either. I've always said, who knows bloody communities better than those that live in the friggin' thing? Not in Dunedin, in our rural communities. And our farmers, if they don't look after their land, there's only one way they go. So, it's about stewardship. There's a lot of things to be considering here. Don't get hung up on just because the government said we've got to simplify local government. It's what's best for our people and the generations ahead. Is that Stu? Yeah, let him in. I'll just see what Roger had to say and then we'll...
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Just to add what Simon was saying, really, I know it's detailed, but it's a question I've been asking at Southern Waters. What functions a regional council might fit under that umbrella? And as Simon says,
Simon says.
but if you've got a rural unitary authority that's got a lot of those functions, those other little bits that you're talking about could be a part of Southern Waters. So then you're not duplicate. Could be a division of it. I don't know.
But that's in the detail. But in the meantime, just in closing, before we jump over and welcome Stu, so if we're looking at option 1A, the approximate population is 102 to 103,000 people. Dunedin's population is 132,000. Right? So I trust Google. But anyway, welcome, Stu. Hey, can you just give us a moment, please, Stu? Since you're hot off the press, I haven't had a look at it, and I don't know if the others have, but I'm looking at the smile on your face. I reckon you've got a golden goose tucked away in here for us somewhere, have you? Please tell us. Welcome.
I don't think, John, but we'll see.
Hey, and sorry for the short notice and all that, but people always perform better when they're under pressure, and you're one of those guys.
Hopefully. So you wanted me to walk you guys through this, or how you wanted me to run this? Sorry.
So Stu,
Jumping from another one.
yes, Stuart, Steve, the council has got a agenda report that has the complete analysis and the slides from all your first lot of stuff, right? So, and I have pre-explained that you were going away and what you were doing in terms of analysing that, this year. So I just think, it's relevant to me. I mean, I read it quickly, but I was aware of it, that I can reach my own conclusions. But if you could just probably summarise, the key bits, because I mean, each page is actually just reasonably key. If you could just talk to each bit briefly and explain the relevance of it compared to, in the comparison.
Yeah, and just in relation to the supplementary report we sent through this morning, right?
Correct.
Yep. Cool. Okay, easily enough done then. Okay, so I guess the first thing is just that, we've set out what the purpose of that report is that, we've put some analysis in the supplementary report, but for the most part, a lot of that detailed analysis sits in the full report that we gave to Otago to the Otago regional councils. All that first slide is saying that this is the option we've explored. Worth noting that we've explored the option of having spoken to Steve about this, Central Otago, Cooper and Queenstown Lakes District Council all coming together as a regional, as a new unitary under the Head Start, well, probably not under the Head Start proposals, but under the local government approach. We haven't at this point considered in any of this what a boundary readjustment may or may not look like, but I would suggest that that might be some of the stuff that you would consider as part of the work that you do going forward. So our assessment here assumes that there is no boundary readjustment, but it is worth noting that that may change some of those things, and I can talk to that a little bit as we move through. I think you're hopefully all familiar with the graphs on that are on page 4 or slide 4 of the deck that we've got here, and in particular the way that we present this information. Being where we think there is a potential for a range of efficiencies to be achieved through an amalgamation. You'll see, for those of you that aren't familiar or have heard me talk through this a little bit before in relation to the Otago regional stuff, that for this option we've got benchmark costs between 2% higher and 11% lower, but actually we're sort of sitting the efficiency assumption here at around 4%. Which actually places it, when you look at slide 5, as being about the same as the coastal unitary in the previous analysis, and also, noting that the rural unitary is no longer an option anyhow, with Waitaki having moved north or indicating that it's going to move north, and similarly a coastal unitary not really being an option, with Waitaki again making its decision. So of the remaining options that do sit available to Clover at this stage, it is an option that is certainly better than what the inland option was. But again, those efficiency numbers or those efficiency targets basically saying to me that you probably wouldn't do this with the numbers. So there's not enough in here to say this is gonna save your ratepayers a mountain of money. But at the same time, what we're saying is it's also not likely to cost your ratepayers significantly more. It's likely to be close to being a financially neutral transaction here if you're moving into that amalgamated situation. Which I think in general, when we're considering options that include Queenstown, is probably good news. I think typically we have a tendency to assume that when we're considering options including Queenstown, that they might be a bit more expensive. Worth noting when we look at these options, and that any options in that report, is that a lot of the cost drivers and a lot of the costs that we see in the territorial authority space in particular, relating to things like community development, economic development, sports and recreation, culture, they're all things that typically are driven by things like urban population and urban land area, because there are activities where we actually expect councils to have a greater involvement in them. So or potentially provide a higher level of service for those activities than maybe potentially lower population or rural councils do. That's not to say you don't provide a good level of service, but rather that actually what we see in rural councils as well is often a delivery model that involves a lot more input from community organisations. So what I would just say there is that all of those options that include large urban areas, including Queenstown, we would actually expect to see some of those costs lying where they are incurred, so lying in Queenstown to the extent that they relate to higher levels of service being provided to Queenstown residents. That's the quick rundown on the cost analysis without going into the detailed approach around that, which I can talk to for people who haven't heard me talk to that in the past. In terms of the assessment against the government criteria, we've gone through this, and actually when you look at, I guess slide 7 has got the detailed assumptions here around that, around the other government criteria. And in fact, this option is probably quite good from a catchment management perspective. We have the entirety of the Cliff River, almost the entirety of that catchment within this option, which is fantastic from a catchment management perspective, and well aligned with some of those expectations that we've heard from Maitahu around setting out boundaries around the rivers as well. That support of the new planning system as well we've noted there as well that the other areas that there are boundary adjustments, picking up the lower Waitaki, or picking up parts of rural Dunedin, for example, might even improve some of that catchment management assessment even further, but we haven't obviously modelled that option. We still have, more councils, so there are still a whole pile of places where we've got additional interface points compared to a single unitary. But that said, we are also reducing the number of those interface points because we currently have 3 councils working with a regional council instead of effectively 2 working with a regional joint entity. So again, some useful outcomes that come out of that and why we've rated that the way we have. You'll see, again, I've talked about economies of scale, but we have noted that there's minor efficiencies potentially available there, but we also have some useful strategic decisions, in particular looking at some of those main freight corridors and some of the transport routes that we have and the key transport networks across the district. We've got a reasonably good amount of alignment there, with the exception of the Port of Dunedin link there, which obviously would require Dunedin City Council to be part of our model to really be able to deal with that one. But noting that it's state highway as well from where your boundary would be right through to the port, I think is largely state highway anyhow. We could separate, we've noted here that we can have separate levels of service specific to Wakatipu. We could also have specific levels of service relating to the Wanaka catchment as well in Queenstown. So I think that would be dealt with potentially through representation reviews and through different ward structures that would potentially accommodate Queenstown and Wanaka's differing level of service expectations and differing arrangements compared to what we have for maybe Central Otago and Clutha in terms of the things that are driving costs or the things that are important to our communities. And really importantly, I think, we've assessed this option as maintaining a really strong local voice. So it's got really good alignment with the rural community. One thing we've seen across the country, I think, through all of this work is a really strong push from rural communities to make it really clear that rural is different to urban. And you see that theme also coming through in things like the New Zealand Initiatives report as well, that talks about the loss of the urban-rural council and the urban-rural distinction that happened with the 1989 reforms, and how they felt that was still quite an important thing, and we see that across communities in the country. And in fact, that's quite reflective. I think you're talking about Southern Waters before. That retention of that rural voice is also quite well aligned to Southern Waters' rural focus as well that we've got going on there. And then deliverability, again, we've suggested that it's actually probably quite well aligned towards deliverability. It certainly aligns better with community sentiment than a single unitary authority. It aligns quite well with the inland regional deal that's being considered for Central Otago and Queenstown Lakes. And the regional functions could be delivered either by a Dunedin unitary authority or through some joint entity that deals with both Dunedin City Council and this new unitary authority that we'll have to name. And then I think the final slide here, slide 8, you'll just see that we've again compared all of those options against options 1, 2, and 3, just to show where the differences are. And you'll see that it probably actually comes out as what I would suggest is the highest ranking option amongst all 4 of those options there. So there's been some good conversations happening, obviously, to come up with what looks like a really good option for you guys at the moment. I will leave my high-paced rundown like that, and then let people ask questions about either this report or the broader Otago report if they like, and that's probably better that I address questions rather than spend ages talking through the content.
Right. Comments?
Or questions.
Questions?
I suppose, so
Comments?
He may have something else. He did this at the last minute for us. Making himself available, so we want to release him as soon as we can.
Page 8, Stu's pretty cool with how you've assessed the option 4 against the government's criteria. There's a bit stands out there. And even on slide 7, there's some really good really good stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was my takeaway, and I got, and Alice, who obviously has been involved in this project as well, was, the one that was doing a lot of this assessment, but, you know, I thought that it would come out looking all right. I don't know if I thought it was going to come out looking quite as well, as good as it was, which, I thought was quite interesting, but I couldn't disagree with her either, so.
Yeah. Dave, if you swing to page 7 and 8, you'll see there on 7, it's, yeah. And the deliverability side of it, the regional functions aligns more closely with community sentiment.
If you're looking at the hard copy, it hasn't got the colour. Whereas the one on your email's got the colour.
And it aligns with the inland regional deal that Queenstown and Lakes and Central Otago District Council have got, so.
Then what about we haven't really done modelling of option 1A, have we, of 90 page? What are we getting? 90 something, 92. It didn't really come. That was the whole of the catchment, isn't it? Taking in parts of Waitaki.
Yeah, which document are you looking at, talking to?
Back onto the original.
Agenda item.
Yeah.
Yeah, but are you looking at this one here? This is what we're talking
No,
about.
I know we're talking about that one. But that's not taking in the actual catchment. Which is, to me, if you take them on the unitary functions, the catchment makes a lot of sense for making it simple.
Yeah, that's what it explains in this handout.
Yeah, so what,
This handout, yeah.
we haven't, you're correct, we haven't done any modelling of what taking in those catchments would look like.
Yes.
What I will say is that modelling is particularly challenging, even with our benchmarking approach. It's almost impossible to compare it to actual results. Because councils don't record their data at a small enough level for us to be able to do that. But also what I would say is that, and even with that, we need a reasonable level of certainty around where the boundary is to be able to do that modelling. Because we're bringing in predominantly rural areas, my gut feel would be that bringing that in is probably, it's certainly not going to make the financials any worse. If anything, it's probably going to make them marginally better. But it'll be around the edges, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, fine. Yeah, financially marginal.
Once again, that's going to come back down to the detail.
Yeah.
Which is miles away. Yeah.
So when we go for Head Start, could you, you're talking about the actual councils that you're here to work with, but could you throw 2 different maps at it?
Well, we're not going to be able to do Head Start.
Yeah,
No.
we're not capable.
We just we don't have councils in agreement for a 9th of August deadline to complete a proposal. That's why we don't have a Head Start.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at this, you might go, oh, I wish I had 2 more months to work on councils if you felt that this was the...
But how in depth, realistically, how in depth do the government believe that Head Start's going to be? Like, no one will be able to achieve it fully in depth.
Yeah. Well, to give you an example, the Far North,
Yeah.
they started working on a Head Start proposal 12 months ago.
Yeah.
We had a council this week, was it last week, late last week, Piper said they're not ready for a Head Start proposal, which blows all that work out of the way. So yeah, they've been working on it for 12 months, still can't come to a heads of agreement on a Head Start proposal.
Your Worship, I'm not sure if Stuart can say in public, because this is a public meeting, but his company is obviously in touch with a lot of what's going on in the country, and so he'd be pretty well placed to say whether he thought that there would be compliant proposals be able to be submitted.
Yeah.
I would say we are working we're preparing 3 or 4 outline proposals. Some of those outline proposals will then have up their sleeve for a council meeting that might be, say, on the 5th of August, and you can't leave preparing the proposal until the 5th of August, right? So they've got to have the proposal in case they want to submit it. And so some of those will not, most likely, I suspect, won't get past the council votes and won't end up actually being submitted. So they have thrown money at something that's not going to be used. But that's the only way to respond in that time frame. I reckon we'll get, of the 4 or so that we're writing, 2 of them submitted. And then across the rest of the country, I think there'll be a varying degree of, I reckon there might be 3 or 4 more that get submitted to the government. Some of those will be proposals that are submitted where it says, we're submitting this proposal, but our neighbouring council that's also part of the proposal doesn't actually agree to it. So I think it might be 1 or 2 hostile, what I call hostile takeovers coming through as proposals. So there might be 1 or 2 of those, and then there'll be predominantly though, yeah, I think maybe a handful of proposals, a very small handful of proposals that are actually going to have full backing of all the councils in them that are submitted on that date. I think what that does, and Jock was at the Mayoral Forum meeting and on the room would have heard this firsthand. But it does potentially present opportunities for you to kind of go to DIA and say, well, we need another month. And if we have another month, we can pull something together, maybe, but there's no guarantee that they will consider that.
I'm surprised. The information in your analysis here, Stu, on 7 and 8, this is quite valuable if we are proposing an agreement with our country cousins, to actually put a letter forward to the DIA, because there's some really good stuff in here. So I must thank you for that. And I'll hear all about it in another couple of hours' time, no doubt, with my country cousins.
So if you don't go for the head start, you end up with the backstop, and you know you're getting the regional council duties lumped.
Yeah.
In 2028.
This whole process, the thing that annoys me is they're saying head start or backstop. What the hell is the backstop?
They don't even know what the head start is.
I know, but I mean, if they must have some idea, and then we could go, oh, we like the backstop. We won't go through all this BS, and we'll just then, okay, yeah, we like the look of that. Let's get on with it, because it could be what we're proposing. We don't know. No, I know they don't know what it is, or they're saying they don't.
Don't be surprised if they've got a whiteboard in Wellington with the boundaries already drawn.
Yeah, that's
so we're going to be
point.
proactive.
I believe, and Stu could back me up on this one. I mean, everything we've heard is that whilst they haven't specifically said anywhere in writing, but our understanding of what the likely backstop would include, absolutely, is a single unitary for each region.
Yep. So that'll be.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of the backstop process is that it will be much more closely aligned to, if you remember the early simplifying local government proposals around establishing a CTB, and the mayors will be part of that and coming up with a solution. I suspect that there will be a desire for there to be a single unitary. I think that's the government's will across the country. If they have their way, that's what the answer would be for everyone. And to that extent, my advice would be is that if you are vehemently opposed to a unitary authority that includes the likes of Dunedin City Council in it, and I'm not going to suggest whether you are or not, but that the only way that you could guarantee or have a very good chance of being ensured that you do not end up in a unitary with Dunedin City Council would be the Head Start pathway, or at least putting something proactive towards the government that sets out your approach to being able to deal with that otherwise. So for the councils not doing a Head Start approach, one of the things that I personally think councils should be doing is at least making their intentions very clear, making it very clear to the government the work that has been done, the reason why a Head Start proposal isn't being submitted, and then also setting forward a time frame for which you might want to undertake further analysis and research and some clear deliverables or some clear expectations and milestones for the government to be able to actually have a look and see that you're making meaningful progress on your options. That might help you avoid a backstop process, but there's no guarantee. Again, the government has said there are two pathways here. There's Head Start or there's backstop. If you look at things like New Plymouth, they're certainly going down that writing a letter approach, and I think they've framed it up as something innovative that they came up with themselves, but I think a whole pile of councils are considering that same idea.
Yeah. So you want to make the best effort to go.
Anyone else got
Head
any
Start.
questions for Stu?
I've got one that's probably sounds a bit stupid. Where exactly are the efficiencies coming from?
Well, if you look at the report, we're saying there's only about 4%, which would almost be entirely covered just through removing back office duplication. Where else would we expect some efficiencies to come from would certainly be in securing things like a single roading contract, potentially that covers the area, which therefore means that the roading contractors might be able to cover a broader service area. It might be aligning levels of service, so some of the efficiencies are probably more related to changes in level of service, but like I say, we're talking about 4% here, permanent, not 4% year on year. And so the reality is we're saying there's not significant efficiencies here.
So can I ask the next obvious question is what happens to the risk profile?
Yeah, but and I think one of the key things I think that we do get from amalgamation is improved resilience and staff capability, well, not necessarily capability, that's a bit cruel, but staff capacity, and it's increased ability to access experts within your organisation and increased specialisation that does improve your resilience and improves your ability to respond to risk. In terms of the financial risk, actually for most councils, we're seeing that, from a debt and balance sheet perspective, that's predominantly been dealt with through water reform anyhow. But again, increased rating base, increased geographic area, potentially actually spreads your risk better, because things like a localised weather event or a localised even things like earthquakes potentially will only impact part of your district rather than the entirety of your district in some places. So generally, from a risk profile perspective, we would expect some improvements in terms of your responsiveness to risk and your ability to deal with risks.
Yeah.
So what's the risk profile of joining up with the QLDC, given that the Alpine fault's looming? Like, yeah.
But that wasn't within Stu's scope.
No, I know, but
Stephen, yeah,
it's something that
the,
needs to be considered, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's once again that's in the detail. We can't sort of debate the detail, workshop the detail. We're going to find out who we're prepared to work with. Let alone the detail.
I mean that detail on how much risk is associated with if there's an AF8 event that hammers Queens down. I mean, that's firmly in the insurance risk modeler world in particular, and I think it's probably something like Jock says that you'd need to get into the detail. I mean, I guess the reality is that an AF8 that happens is going to happen whether you're a unitary or not. So it's just whether your ratepayers end up having to pick up the pieces or whether they don't. But I think those impacts will be felt throughout Southland if there's an AF8, to be honest, or throughout Otago.
New Zealand.
Has anyone got any more? Michelle, were you indicating a question for Stu? Hey, well, Stu, once again, thanks so much for performing under pressure and delivering this on very short notice, but it's been great. And like I say, it's for tonight's discussion with my country cousins, it's going to be interesting. So,
Yeah, good luck.
Need more than good luck, mate. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
It's a lot. Yeah, we've got to stick to what we're dealing with right at the moment, and that's working out our boundaries and who we're prepared to work with. The details got to come later.
Sure.
So I'll tell you, one of the risks we've got at the moment is all this is coming at a bloody cost.
Yeah.
It's all time, and the government aren't offering us any silver spoon with any funding for these costs that are associated with all this work. So, yeah, that's a bloody risk on its own. On one hand, they're telling us to save money, and on the other hand, they're forcing all this upon us, and it's cost.
Josh, I think there's two choices really, something with Dunedin and something without. Simple as that.
Yeah, Simon?
It's just coming back to Dunedin. That's our big issue. Like when you look at it's just where's the dysfunction? Is it the Dunedin Council or the Dunedin councillors? Because for the most part, I assume the council does its job. The staff does their thing. I mean, basically,
You listen to
the dysfunction as we see it is the noise in the ODT.
You need to subscribe to the ODT, Councillor.
I do skip. I'm just.
Yeah, that's all there on the front page most weeks.
No, but not what I'm talking about. Though, is it's a real dysfunction there. It's probably not council. It's in the staff and the employees. The dysfunction seems to be politically in the councils. Yeah.
This week.
Yeah, but is it what's the actual concern though? Is it the dysfunction, or do they share the same values as the rural community?
But if we were all together, and I'm assuming that a lot of those people that caused the dysfunction would not be elected onto a wider Otago Unitary Council.
Benedict Knoll.
Yeah, we see that side, but we're not here. It's not election year or anything.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just like we're rolling out Dunedin, but I'm saying that if we were in a bigger council.
But remember, go back to what our people have already told us: 57%
but that's
want to keep it rural.
But a lot of that is because of that.
I don't know what it is, but we're going to be guided by our people. So yeah. Don't get too hung up.
It's not, so dysfunction or how things are operating may be one of those issues. No, the question is, what would the form of representation be in a single unitary? And the representation currently under law is based on population.
Yes.
Elected members by population. And so the issue is not just an issue that says, oh, maybe people aren't playing well together in that sense. It's more about in a single unitary, how many would be direct urban related. If you did it that way, how many would be direct urban related
majority
elected members versus the rest in that sense? That would be the concern. And then the other side of it is what happens if you did it by, under the arrangement, let's do the way they vote in Dunedin, single transferable vote, or whatever that mix is, and what about if they don't do it by ward, they do it across again, those things which you might think would be unreasonable, you wouldn't expect, but can bring even worse results when you are looking at population. So whilst dysfunction is a concern, I'm sure, about things, or perceived dysfunction or whatever, the rural voice issue around the actual number of elected members for the rural spaces is the issue when you are combining with big urban areas.
Yeah, well, the population, as you pointed out, Dane, is about 50-50, isn't it?
No, not really. Yeah, 100 to 130,000.
Yeah.
And that includes
that
includes the urban area of Queenstown as well.
Yeah, and the rural area of Dunedin.
Councillor
two airports.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah,
Thank you for your patience.
and I've heard you say probably a dozen times that we're not worried about details, but details can determine where we're going. Like some details can be worried about later, but others can determine which one I support.
So, in the meantime, today's purpose of the workshop is for you to give the staff direction to come back to our next meeting for decisions, which we're going on, head start or backstop or in the middle.
Or you wish.
So if you tell us how much detail you want, we'll be able to tell you if it's achievable or not. And I've got a pretty good answer it now.
No, Your Worship. Sorry. If you look at the report in terms of what I was saying, and I've made a number of statements there, is that there is no Head Start proposal. So there is no Head Start proposal, because you could say to me, hey, our direction for our decision meeting in a week is to do a Head Start proposal, And you could say, go with the two other councils. And we still would have to get the other two councils to agree on that, and then obviously put something together. What I'm saying to you already is that our understanding of the position of the other two councils, and Queenstown's been reasonably clear, even though it hasn't gone for a decision yet, is that they are unlikely to be agreeing to a Head Start proposal, but they believe that they can support the letter of working together. So all I'm telling you is that for all those reasons, I don't have a Head Start proposal.
That's fine. So it's a half Head Start, isn't it?
Yes.
The key of the Head Start is
but
to
the
make
difference,
councils talk.
the difference is we don't have to have
Full.
no, but you don't even be looking at and saying, I want to work with these two councils or things. You don't have to specify any of that. You're not asked to debate, vote, do anything around saying I want to work with these councils and not this one. Under that arrangement where you're simply accepting that you can't do a Head Start, the real decision is, do you just want to do nothing and do a backstop? Or do you want to say, we'll play together and you just go down that letter approach, the half approach, and you don't have to, at this particular point, do anything more about who it's with and all that sort of stuff, right? So you wish if they don't have to do that at this point, at some point they will, but not for today, if we understand there isn't a Head Start proposal.
So it's just, all they really require is a commitment that we are prepared to work towards it.
That's what he's saying.
That's correct, because that's how it's resolved.
There's no-
But it might
there's
push
no
you.
Head Start.
That could potentially push you to a backstop, but we can't physically achieve a Head Start. So it's in between, isn't it? Given the backstop, we know we can't reach a Head Start. So
We're further advanced in the backstop, we just need more runway.
So my direction would be, I like you to prefer option 1A. That's been the map of 1A. Because it makes sense to me.
Get to make that next week.
Well, it's my direction.
Yeah.
If you want direction from workshop.
I think something to consider is that you're not just three councils, that you need to have DCC, some conversation with DCC around taking that big chunk of Middlemarch, which those feds would be really, really supportive of, because those farms are slammed with rates. We'd also like to see the north boundary, so looking at map 1A, the north boundary of the south boundary of the Waihemo ward come down towards Dunedin, so that Dunedin is closed right in. The other thing to consider is that while Queenstown population is only 50,000 or whatever it is at the moment, on any given day it's more than 100,000. And if you're kind of going Dunedin, the issues around Dunedin are don't want to offend anyone, a left-leaning Green council. We have the exact same issue. I mean, if you look at ORC, the exact same issue come from ORC, not this one, excluding this one. ORC councillors in the past from QLDC have been left-leaning Green, which puts, as farmers, puts us at risk of that voice being too strong in 20 years when the population of Queenstown is 100,000 and 200,000 on any given day. So it's probably something to consider.
Hence why you want to ring fence Queenstown.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing? Your detailed jock, an earthquake, the Christchurch earthquake cost the Christchurch City Council 10 billion. After insurance, government handouts, etc., it cost us Christchurch City Council 7.7 billion. So it's not a minor detail.
Yeah, but it's detail we can't provide you, Stephen, is what I'm saying. That stuff comes in later. We've got to.
No.
We're talking about Head Start and backstop here at the moment.
Yeah, it's an absolute consideration though.
You're way ahead of where we are.
Yeah.
Larry, come on. You're too silent. You're thinking of something.
Probably because I'm not going to be able to get much out. Your Honour, that's why. Your Worship. Look, I'm not quite sure what we're going to do. I'm on the catchment view that we should be in the catchment area for all the rivers, but, rural people in Otago have got a massive problem. I've just worked the numbers out and there's only 26% of the vote was rural. What's that? 74% in Dunedin and Queenstown. So it doesn't matter what you're going to do, you're going to get mowed down eventually because the government wants one unitary authority. So, you know, you may have some chance by going with Queenstown and alienating Dunedin, but if they both end up in the unitary authority, you're going to end up in exactly the same position where we are with the ORC, where the rules they make are almost impossible for our economy to exist. So how do you get around that one?
There's a fair bit of detail on that.
So is that fight for no change then?
What is that, sorry?
Is that fight tooth and nail for no change?
Well, that's not going to change.
Status quo.
What's that?
Try your luck.
Unfortunately, I'm with Bruce. I think the detail really matters in all this because it's.
Of course it does.
Yeah, we all know that.
Local boards are going to have a significant influence over time on this thing. So but you need to be able to ring fence them so some of their rules don't apply to, you know, what we do.
What do you mean, unfortunately?
Sorry, I mean,
He's just being honest.
I agree with
For a change. That's right. We're doing shit and we're not doing shit. Let's do shit.
Well.
I'm not sure what the numbers were at Gore, but having Gore emphasises more of the rural.
And if Waitaki
Yeah.
doesn't go that way, because they don't really know, it might change things.
Well, it's not, yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but I see a lot of pushback because it's no, we're Southland.
Yeah.
You know, no, we're Southland. You're breaking a water catchment. I've got no problems inviting Gore. I've got no issues. They're in the same boat. Their constituents are about. We know that there is a difference. It's not a horrible divide. There is a difference between the way rural accept their services and urban.
Once upon a time,
Hence why people live in the urban environment. That's just how it is. So yeah, to make the rural big, I've got no problem with that. You do want to make it as large as possible. Queenstown Lake's what's 55,000 or something. There's 30 in Queenstown. The 25,000 sits in Wanaka and Hawea catchment, right? So I can tell you now, they would rather regard themselves as rural.
Oh, yeah.
Sure enough, you know, it might the people that I know that live there,
Or a tide farms.
they grow they have a lot of sentiment towards, you know, they feel like they get the other poor cousin.
But at the moment, they don't influence our decisions, so.
No.
We go back to our agenda and workshop, so like, do we need to be any more questions or?
So what, just this Morrison and Lowe report, did you ask for that job or is that combined with Central and Lakes? So
That was a decision Steve and I made, yeah.
Yeah, so you'll forward that on as quickly as.
I've already forwarded it.
They've got it.
And I'll be following up with if you feel like putting some money in the kitty to help us out, which I'm sure I can get from
No, I'm just
council.
more concerned about them getting
If
it
you're
right
in funds,
quick as possible.
had a good year, haven't they?
Yeah, already done. So they've got it because I think Queenstown Lakes was talking about having they were commissioning some work too, so it was good to have our work already in front of it, and we know Central's got their workshop, so getting it in front of them is important so that they've already got that information. So we've done it.
Yeah, I'm just going to raise something here. So, and all these figures here, and I saw the GDP here, but you know, I look at Dunedin, most of their money is created within New Zealand. So what I'm saying is they create very little export earnings to drive this country's everything. So I'd actually like to see the numbers on what the Clutha District Council and Waitaki, what our export earnings are that come into the region, because I actually think that should be part of we talk about population, decisions should be made on population, but maybe there has to be some formula where the people with the most financial clout will bring in the most money that drives your economy should have a.
Probably find that
Based on
information.
population, it has to, that what we're generating has to come in there somewhere, and that maybe is how you even up the field from the cities to the rural areas in New Zealand.
You'll probably find that's available now on
One
information.
person, one vote is the basis of our democracy.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, but look, we don't really live in a democracy. I mean, we're going to have appointed people from iwi or Manawhina or whatever you want to call it on these councils, so that's not democratic, is it? So,
Just
what I'm saying here is just think slightly laterally, and if you want to have more influence on the rural proportion, I think that those figures would be really interesting. I could be completely wrong, but to me,
That's a whole.
I
nother
can't see how
topic.
Dunedin generates much export earnings into the country to drive the economy. All the is within the economy just going round and round and round in circles in education and health.
Scott Technologies and
Cruise
a
ship.
few other ones down there might.
Ports. Look, whenever,
Yeah. Righto, well,
no perfect bullet.
you've got a bit to think about. What day's that actual meeting scheduled? That actual.
Yes, I mean, like when, if or when you are finishing your discussion here, then I'd like to wrap up with where to from here, but so that I can understand the direction we're going to do. So
Yeah.
just let me know when we're up to that.
Are we up to that point now?
Just to,
It's 3 to 5
Just trying to get my head around the whole scenario. So we're not doing Head Start, but we're going to put forward that we're working with some people, other councils. Correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different options here. Can that let it just not be generic that we are working, as Steve said, you don't actually have to name them. If we do name them, are then we held to that afterwards?
Councillor, you have just suggested something that all the smart people that are writing up this draft letter have all assumed and do. So you are thinking exactly along the lines of what's being proposed to be drafted. So what I was going to follow on from in terms of direction is that, and I've just seen a draft of that proposed letter, a lot of detail not in it, but it's here. I can't share it with you like I shared that because that's written for the mayors that are all meeting tonight, and I'd be in trouble in a public setting sending that around the traps before they've seen it, right? But what I can say is that, and what I can confirm is that what's being proposed to be discussed with the mayors is that generic type letter that doesn't say we're working with 3 councils, or whatever, because it actually has to be on behalf of all the councils plus the regional council. Sorry, it might exclude the regional council because they're not part of the process, but all the councils are a target region. So they're generically saying we're playing in the sandpit together, like you said, not specifically saying any particular detail. So I want to take that up with you because it means it's a big difference that if I'm preparing something for a decision report for council, which is only next week, a week plus 1 day, and that, so it's an extraordinary meeting that we have to do the agenda for that we'll probably may get out by Friday, or should be able to. Then it's really important to understand what it is that the decision is going to be, right? So if we agree, as long as you agree, that we aren't in a position for a head start, and that we don't like the backstop, that's just as a workshop direction, specifically, that you do want something on an interim basis, and then the idea is that the decision report would propose the draft letter. It effectively a decision report for approval of that approach, and the draft letter would be there, right? And then that just means that I don't have to do a whole lot of work around trying to, which we won't get anyway, any more assessments of options on 1A, 1B, 1C, whatever. It wouldn't be there in time for it. And I can just concentrate on pulling the discussion today and just bringing a relatively simple decision report, getting you to approve whatever the content of the letter is, that all the rest would agree to as well. And we'd be one of the first councils. I think Central Otago's decision meeting's the same day. Central and ourselves would be the two first councils saying yes to that approach. And we would expect the others would be signing up to the same approach and should be able to get that through. So that would be the summary. If you agree with that, just in general, then I can write that and we can get a decision report next week to do that.
The only thing is, what if tomorrow at Central Otago and they had 12 councillors all like Dane, you go, let's pump for the head start.
Let's go.
We've chopped our option now.
So that's what I was coming to, is to ask John, you're going to the Mayoral Forum tonight.
Yeah, we both are, but
What's the question?
Well, it's taking away the consensus of the discussions we've had here today, because to me, you're definitely missing out on the opportunity for the head start. Because I know that it won't be, the best efforts anyway.
Well, what we're talking about is more runway, though, isn't it?
well, let's get it this way. We know that we won't get a we wouldn't be able to get a Head Start proposal for a 3 council aspect if Queenstown really doesn't really agree to that. They may agree to it later, but we're pretty confident with everything that's said, everything that's been explained to us, and the workshops that they've done and have reported back to us, is that they're not interested in a Head Start proposal at this point. They will support, we believe, the letter approach. That same advice has been given to us. Sure, it hasn't gone to councils. Nobody can say, you may vote differently on Thursday, right? So nobody can guarantee anything, but we are talking to the mayors who should know something about how they're talking to their councillors and that side of it. The info we're getting back is that they are more likely to all support, including Dunedin, all support the letter approach. That's where we go. We don't know yet. Dunedin is waiting until the end to do their decision. I think it'll be in August for their side of things. So it'll be right at the end. But all we can do is take our decisions and go down a pathway that we believe is going to be what others are doing.
Has Dunedin offered an olive branch? Are they doing anything proactive about
Always.
No, the only information we have is that their workshop and their decisions are right at the end of the process. So nobody knows. There's nothing to guide us.
And Dunedin have had the same information that Central Otago and Queensland had that I presented to them last week. And there's been no conversation since the last Mayoral Forum.
So with the letter approach, what's going to happen after that? If we think that the 3 council approach is the best, you're going to talk to the mayors and...
Well, first things first, the government have got to accept the letter. They might turn around and say no.
No, you're in the backstop.
Yeah, you're in the backstop.
No, look,
We're going to sort it out for you.
They're going to do that, Michelle.
No, I know.
They're creating a noose for their own neck if they do that. So I don't think they're going to do that at all, actually, personally.
They're shut down.
So they are going to run with the letter proposals because that's what they're going to get from most councils in this country. So they'll run with that and extend the runway. As long as we show that we're intent on doing something proactive, I think things will tick along. And because if they end up with a major revolt from everybody, they're not going to get anywhere.
Well, they'll get thrown in the government.
Yes, so there would need to be a program of work post the letter, which I can say nobody's planned that yet.
Yeah.
Would you just do the, with the other CEOs and that, sort of have a draft a letter up between you all, so it's all written the same way?
No, it's already drafted.
I've got a copy,
Yeah,
which is what I meant, Joe. They've already circulated for the meeting tonight. I was just saying, I hummed and hard about giving it to you, but I don't think I can because it's within the Mayoral Forum side of things. And once they say yes, I'm sure that then that would be circulated to the elected members because we'd want to use it for our, I'd definitely be using it for the agenda, right?
Yeah. So the process is the Secretariat, the Otago Mayoral Forum, they have composed this letter. It gets circulated to the mayors and all the CEs, and then it gets what we want and what we don't want sorted out. So until that happens.
I mean, it's helpful to us that we're the first, and if the consensus was that we sort of do agree with the letter approach, then Mayor Jock can take it tonight and say, hey, we can definitively say that we had a workshop and the workshop direction was to do it. Well, that's the first of any of them to be able to say that definitively. And it's our intention to be able to take a paper saying yes to that, the decision next week. So that's something positive to take tonight, right? We're on the
Probably
ball.
helps.
We're on the,
We're ahead of the game.
the given direction. And that's information that my colleagues will be able to share with their councils too when they have their workshops.
Just following on too from sort of agreeing with Larry there on that, if we go into the backstop process, they will take note of where we're heading. Because just going back to the local water done well, DIA made a lot of noise about how big and tough they were, and yet they've done nothing to any of the councils and pretty much just followed. The only one that they did react to was to pull Waitaki back into the original proposal. Yeah, so so listening, quite happily say that they followed it. And and I'm pretty sure that if we carry on with that, then it will be what the backstop process will be.
And just to be clear too, the Waitaki, their resolution to go north, it's not a given. That relationship could break down and they're back this way, talking to us. So
The resolutions left the door open.
the resolution's left the door open for them. So that's why it's hard to quantify detail at the moment, because there's a lot of this way, that way.
Do you feel comfortable enough with the way I've summarised the direction and what you would expect in a decision report next Thursday?
You know, while you're thinking about that, are you comfortable enough with me going to the Mayoral Forum tonight and saying that our council is on board with going with it? We're not ready for a head start.
Sweet ass.
You're going with it.
Well, we're not going to be ready for a head start.
But better than
Grantstown.
But how quantify what's required for the head start? Because, I mean,
Well, it's in the agenda.
you read it, I mean, you
But go to the agenda and have a look. You tell us.
yeah, they are doing under the head start pathway, a voluntary and fast track process that allows councils to meet simplification.
Yeah, but carry on through the criteria.
System ahead of wider reform.
Yeah.
It's just designed to reduce duplication and improve.
So,
It's
so
not a
we-
full plan, it's not a done and dusted.
Yeah.
No,
But
but
go
we
through
need,
it. Read the rest of it.
we
But if
need,
you aim the target as a head start, and it doesn't qualify as a head start, you make every.
And you've got to have the majority of the population, you've got to have 2 other councils on board to enter a head start.
Correct.
Well, we have
One
another
other
council.
council.
No, with 2.
You're gonna have one other council.
And the majority of the population, we don't have that.
Yeah.
We don't have either.
Yeah, but you'll know
We don't have
what it's
either.
evening.
Yeah. No, I won't.
No.
Because they haven't had their workshops
Yeah,
yet.
but they'll be in.
No, they
No.
don't.
Yes.
yeah, I mean, that's the problem is that you need to, that minimum.
We can only put the foot down and.
I suspect that the amount of staff work to get a head start proposal is highly unlikely, because considering you've still got to have business as usual. You know, we've talked about the workload of the staff right through all the departments, and then to expect them to have, and I would say this isn't just putting 2 words together to make a proposal. Highly unlikely to be ready for August, start of August. So I think the letter of intent or whatever it is the only sort of option that we can go down, unless we want to go for a backstop, and we don't know what that is. So you don't know what you don't know. So let's just say, hey, we're committed to look at it, and we're not just flagging it. So.
But isn't the idea of this letter to get more runway so we can, possibly could get in a position for a head start?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's about?
All of it.
Well,
You're able to put in the letter that you don't want to be part of Dunedin.
I know we can't sign that, it's a letter from.
Yes, they're a bit early.
No, what's this?
Hope you will see them.
Thank you for your opinion, though.
You can write anything, whether you can sign it.
Yeah, you need all five of them to agree.
Don't these on council website, these recordings?
Yeah.
Yes. It's all public. We do.
You'll see the knives coming down the highway tomorrow, mate.
Put it in the ODT, mate.
All good.
It's all Simon
It's all
McTimney, it's all Simon McTimney.
Are we finished?
We're pretty much done, are we? I think I've got a general read of the room and Steve has too. Special thanks to Anna for coming along and popping in those viewpoints.
And Bushy.
No idea.
I didn't actually understand, you here as a member of the public, or you part of these farms too, are you?
I don't quite understand.
Oh, well, that's the case, we might bring it to a close. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.